BeTheTalk, episode 286, featuring Eric Trules. Welcome to BeTheTalk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Eric Trules. Eric, are you ready to talk?
I'm ready, man.
Eric Trules recently retired from USC's School of Dramatic Arts, where he was a faculty member for 31 years. Eric has been a professional modern dancer, poet, solo performer, documentary, filmmaker, Huffington Post blogger, Fulbright scholar, and professional clown. I love that at the end, professional clown. Your talk
Sometimes I put in most proudly professional clown.
Most proudly. Well, Eric, welcome to the talk.
Thank you for having me.
Your talk is called The Train of Opportunity, and you asked the question in the talk, who are you, what's your passion, and what's your contribution to the universe? This is one of these great biographical type talks. You take us all over the place. Please, Eric, take us behind the talk.
It was a pleasure to do. I had wanted to do a TED Talk. So this was a collaboration between the Fulbright Association, of which I'm a member, and I've been a Fulbright scholar a few times, and TEDx. So the Fulbright got the license, and they put together a great conference at the Broad Stage here in Santa Monica in the Los Angeles area. It's a beautiful performance venue. It's been graced by all kinds of wonderful people. It's newish, so probably 10 years old. Mm-hmm. So I was really happy to be presenting at the Broad. There were some good speakers, all of whom had been Fulbright scholars, and I didn't know quite what to speak about because I've done so many different things. But I put it in this, everything in sort of the context that life is what happened. Well, I've been waiting for my plans to work out, which is exactly what John Lennon is attributed to having said. But I actually think he heard it from a little old lady in Liverpool. Life is what happens while you're waiting for your plans to work out. So turned out my life was a series of saying yes to opportunities. So when I was teaching at USC, not right at the beginning, but maybe halfway through those 31 years, I thought that teaching about life and growing up and values and being an artist was equally as important as the actual subjects which I taught, which were connected in a way because everything I teach is about self-expression and creativity. I was teaching a course in improvisation and another on solo performance telling, autobiographical storytelling. It was called Solo Performance. So I'm a long-time storyteller and solo performer, but first-time TED talker. Mm-hmm. So it was different in preparing for it and thinking about the audience and TED's expectations. But I put it all in this container of train of opportunity, meaning that this metaphorical train stops by your station every day of your life, if not once, maybe many times. And your job, if you're brave and smart and risky enough, is to jump on it, to say yes to the opportunities. Because if you don't, it might not stop at your station again. And you might have missed an opportunity that, I don't want to say you'll regret, because you would never know what it was. But I always found that while I was planning one thing, life happened another way with opportunities coming. So I never planned to be a 31-year theater professor at USC. I never planned to become a professional clown, to found and direct New York City's resident clown troupe. I never planned to bump into a woman 31 years my junior who didn't speak my language in Bali, Indonesia, and marry her 3 years later. Or to adopt our 8-year-old nephew, who's now my son, in Los Angeles, California. So life is what happened while, I was saying yes to these opportunities. And, I see a lot of people on your show talking about presentations and sales and that was never my thing. I was always an artist, but being a performer and an artist and a writer and a storyteller, that's what everyone talks about these days, is the power of story in presentation and in business. And, I've gotten a lot of people to tell their stories, along with kicking my own ass out to tell a story as well.
So, Eric, you rightly mentioned that's, the storytelling, that's one of the few things that artificial intelligence can't replicate very well. So do you feel vindicated at the end of, or at this stage of your career? I mean, the 31 years of teaching, you've retired, but does that kind of vindicate your philosophy these last several decades?
I don't quite like the word so much, Nathan. Vindicate. I wasn't.
It's kind of a loaded question. Yeah,
I was never in the wrong. I was always doing the right thing, as Spike Lee would say.
That's even better. That's taking it beyond. That's wonderful.
To catch up, recognize that stories have always been essential to what makes us human, and they've gone on since the beginning of mankind. That's why there's been theater and dance and novels. And, I've been an artist. So to bring an art form to public presentation, the art of public presentation or podcasting, is all interesting to me now. It's just a coincidence of different parts of my life.
All right. So let's talk about the clown troupe. Are there any, relevant clown techniques that would be of interest and helpful to people preparing for their TEDx talk?
Yes. In fact, the first thing I did, if you remember looking at my talk, I tripped onto stage. Mm-hmm. People actually thought I tripped, but being a seasoned tripper, I did an artificial practice trip onto the microphone podium. And then my first line was, I used to be a clown. And of course, it got a laugh because the trip looked like a clown trip. So I didn't plan to become a clown, and before that, I didn't plan to become a modern dancer. But I was all bottled up in my head, like a lot of people were, pre-med and, good student. But it wasn't my calling, and it didn't make me happy, and I didn't like chemistry and physics and calculus. And so I took the road less traveled, and I followed my own instinct. I traveled around the country right after college, up and down, for about 6 months, and I became a modern dancer and then a clown. And what's all similar in that story, in those stories in the train of opportunity, is that clowns too, in the way that I did it, improvised clowning in the public. The program was called Free Public Laughs and was to bring levity to the everyday situation in pedestrian New York, on the Staten Island ferry or the subways. And as a clown, I would sit on people's laps in the subway. I would steal boyfriends and girlfriends, direct traffic. I made a lot of trouble and had a lot of fun and made a lot of people laugh. And you had to say yes to the people's in front of you. You had to be a good judge of who would let you play and who wouldn't let you play. And it was all improvisation. And my life has been all improvisation. And I've taught improvisation at USC for those 31 years. And I think they're all connected. I think life is a big improvisation. No matter how much you plan, your podcast, your life, your career, your marriage, your 2.2 kids and the cars, life is what happens while you're waiting for those plans to work out. Something else happens. Very few people in the world could have said, I pictured myself exactly here when I was much younger. I fantasize about those people. I think Steven Spielberg must have imagined himself a filmmaker for Universal and having his own studio. But I doubt he imagined himself getting divorced once or twice or many of the other things that happen in life. And that's interesting and challenging about life.
Well, I know one rule and only one of improvisation, and that is that you have to say yes and, not
That's correct.
Yes, but.
That's correct. If you say it's raining and we're supposed to be in the same universe, I can't say no, it's actually a beautiful day. because then we're on two different planets and we can't continue the improvisation or the marriage or the train trip or whatever we're on together.
Well, we've been enjoying this conversation with Eric Trules. His talk is called The Train of Opportunity. And yes, like Willy Wonka that I saw on TV the other day, he does pratfall clown-like and start his talk that way. We are going to be talking more to Eric Trules in just a moment over in the Blitz Round. Hey, Talk Universe. I hope you've been enjoying today's episode with today's guest. But you know what? Many people want more than that. Many people that listen to Be the Talk actually want to give a talk. And if that's you, you're not alone. Listen to the rest of this podcast. At the end, I'll have a free resource for you just for listening. And we are here with Eric Trules. It is time for the Blitz Round. I'm about to ask Eric a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of his recent talk. Eric, are you ready?
Blitz away.
Blitz away. Here we go. Were you invited to speak or did you apply? I think you may have mentioned this.
I was invited to speak.
Because this was for Fulbright scholars at USC. And it was
USC is the University of Southern California, yes, where I was a professor for 31 years. But Fulbright is international. It's the U.S.
Oh, it's Fulbright. Okay.
Diplomacy branch that shares its scholars and citizens around the world, and also invites students and faculty from around the world to present their work and offer workshops and talks, etc. So this was a combination between TED and Fulbright, and I was invited, although I work on the Fulbright board here.
Gotcha. All right. So sometimes I look at these questions and I'm like, I know where this is going to go. So are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender? That seems like a silly question to me now that I read that.
No, it's a surprise answer.
Oh.
I actually write almost everything. My podcast or travel stories is completely written. My performances are completely written, yet I taught improvisation. So the thing that every performer or good actor knows is that whether you have memorized lines or not, they have to be new every night. And being in front of an audience and being responsive to them, it's a combination. So although some stand-up comedy is carefully written, some things are improvised, but the trick about scripted material is that you're supposed to make it seem new, alive, and fresh every time.
Yeah, absolutely. So along those lines, is there a tip, tool, or technique that helped you?
I want to give a shout out to John Bates, who was the coach hired by TEDx Fulbright. And he sort of threw out my first talk. Not all the material, but he really taught me what they were after and to pay more attention to the audience. And we worked very well collaboratively. It was very challenging for me because I'm a seasoned performer, do everything my way. But I try to stay open, and I really learned a new performance and presentation technique thanks to John Bates.
Yeah, well, I'd love to have you speak to that for a while. I mean, so you're coming off a 31-year professorship, career, retirement, all of that. You're the performer, you're the improviser, you're the public presenter. And yet there's this TED format that you kind of, they have big letters on there. Yeah, it's only 18 minutes or so. But then you found out there are more specifics. So what did you have to do to kind of maybe set some of your experience or your, how you would normally do things? How were you able to be flexible enough to really embrace the TED format?
Well, first I'll give myself a little credit for being flexible and working with the coach that they hired. Even being an old dude who's seasoned and set in my ways. I wish I could look at the two talks. They were structured very differently. The goal seemed to be in the beginning not to be about me, but to be about the audience, to get them on your train, to tell them a little. I guess the formula was to tell them a very personal story, I think, in which I was vulnerable, and I'm sure that's a helpful technique, so that they can enter your world. And then you can start to give them your background and your journey. And it has to add up to something of value for the audience. What's your talk about? What do you have to offer? Why is it called the train of opportunity in my case? What value might a train of opportunity have for the listening audience? My style was more performative and external, I think, than a lot of the talks I've seen, because I'm such a performer. But I still had to address the structure and the vulnerability and offering something up for the audience. It was a great challenge, and it took a lot of writing work and then a lot of memorizing and practice work.
Yeah, it's pretty formidable for sure. My last question, what was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
When I heard that question before, I had a good one, but now I can't remember it. So
you blocked it out of your mind.
You know what? I had a real nice bonus. Sir Ken Robinson, the most popular TED Talk of all time, is the father of a USC student of mine, James Robinson, who took my class, says a bunch of times. He's funny and brilliant and redheaded, just like his father, Sir Ken. And I guess I asked James to invite his father, and his father gave a talk at this TEDx Fulbright conference. And then we all hung out and took pictures, and he was very complimentary, and I met his whole family, and I think that was a bonus and a reward and very gratifying for me.
Oh, that's wonderful. We've been, and I'm going to just say that I'm going to get to meet Sir Ken next month. So I might just tell him hi from you.
Yeah, I definitely know who I am.
One of our guests, Dr. Michael Hines, who is episode 150, actually is hosting him and has spoke with him at conferences, education conferences. He's a superintendent on out at Long Island, and so is hosting him back on, and invited me to come out and meet. So this is funny how it all comes together. So thank you for sharing that. We've been enjoying this conversation even more with Eric Trules. His talk is called The Train of Opportunity, and you can find out more about him at erictrules.com, TRULES, erictrules.com. And we're going to be back in just a moment with Eric Trules and the final word of advice. Hey, Talk Universe, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want to give the talk to change the world, but you don't know how or even where to start, no problem at all. Go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted for my new 5-day email course that'll show you how. Absolutely free. Just go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted. And we're back with Eric Trules. It is time for the final word of advice.
People out there in podcast land, I've spent a lifetime teaching and trying to practice what I teach, of being yourself, taking chances, taking risks, saying yes to opportunities that come your way, not figuring out what will the audience like, what are the results. I think that's valuable, and I know a lot of people teach that and and teach its value, because if you can see your own talk or presentation objectively, you might form it in a different way, right? You might think, what does the audience want or need? And I'm going to give them what they want. I also think simultaneously that audiences respond to genuineness and passion and recognize and take away a person's belief and passion. So if you are passionate and believe in what you do, and I believe in self-expression and creativity and individuality and being an artist in the world. So if an audience can see that, maybe they'll jump on their own train of opportunity one day or every day as a practice, as a discipline to find new things about themselves and go new places in life. That's not the safe, predictable way, but somehow down that road less taken.
Well, Eric Trules, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. You're doing a good thing, Nathan.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.